people of Hungary will go to the polls in April to vote on whether to keep Viktor Orban in power or choose a new Prime Minister. Orban has led the country for 16 years, but some of the latest polls show he has fallen behind the opposition leader, Peter Magyar. So, can Orban win again, or is Hungary set to change direction? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, Hungary's Viktor Orban is facing the fight of his political life as the country goes to the polls in April. His Fidesz party is up against the opposition, Tisza, led by Peter Magyar. And the US Secretary of State, Rubio, recently waded in, backing Orban and telling Hungarians, your success is our success. It's an election that will be watched closely in Brussels, with Orban frequently defying the European Union.
If there were ever any doubts over American support for Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban, this visit cleared them up. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio came to back up the long-serving leader, hailing a golden age in their relations. Hungary under Orban is one of America's few ideological allies in Europe, and Rubio has openly suggested that Hungarians vote for him in the upcoming election in April.
What happens in this country is up to the voters of this country to determine and decide, and we love the people of Hungary. But there's no reason to sugarcoat it. I'm going to be very blunt with you. The Prime Minister and the President have a very, very close personal relationship and working relationship, and I think it has been incredibly beneficial to the relationship between our two countries.
Viktor Orban and his nationalist Fidesz party have been in power continuously for the past 16 years, having previously served for a 4-year term between 1998 and 2002. Now he has a familiar and tough challenger, Peter Magyar, who was once a member of Orban's party. Now leading his own Freedom and Respect party, he's promising a reset in Hungary's strained relations with the European Union and pledging to unlock around $20 billion worth of frozen EU funds. And some pollsters are even putting him ahead of Orban. With the race heating up, Magyar has accused government figures of a Russian-style smear campaign involving an alleged intimate video which has not yet surfaced, but the government has denied any knowledge. Magyar's plan is ambitious, overhauling healthcare, education and public transport, along with fixing welfare and child protection systems.
The reason why they are trying to attack us, to discredit us, is that they know that we have everything for the victory. We have the majority. That is the main thing. We have the credible candidates, we have our program, we have our experts. With one word, we are ready.
As the nation prepares for one of Europe's most critical elections of this year, the countdown has begun to see who Hungarians want to lead them in these increasingly uncertain times.
Well, let's bring in our guests. I'm delighted to say, joining me here in the studio, we have Jennifer Ewing. Jennifer is a spokesperson for Republicans Overseas UK. In Budapest, we have Daniel Deme. He is editor-in-chief at Hungary Today. Also in Hungary's capital, we have the journalist Marc Roscoe Loustau. And in Lille, in France, we have Donnacha O Beachain. Donnacha is Professor of Politics at Dublin City University. You're all very welcome to this roundtable. Marc, I'll come to you first. 16 years of uninterrupted power for Viktor Orban. How much of a fight has he got on his hands, do you think, now?
Well, absolutely. This is the biggest fight of his political career. All the independent polls coming out of Hungary say that Orban is going to lose. The question really at this point is what kind of dirty tricks will he use to try to stay in power? Because Orban, in the end, he's really gamed the electoral system here in Hungary. He's completely distorted it. It's very much slanted in his favor, with extra votes and extra seats pretty much guaranteed to go to his political party, Fidesz. Hungary's democracy isn't. It is not an even playing field. And yet, despite all of this, Orban has tried every rhetorical dirty trick in the book to slander his opposition, the opposition candidate Peter Magyar, and nothing has stuck. Voters still clearly want Orban out. So it's clear to me, at least, that Orban is in a weak position, and he's getting increasingly desperate by the moment.
Daniel, just come in on that. Do you think Orban is really going to lose this?
I don't think so. I think someone who reports from Hungary should know better than only reports about the polls that are claiming that the opposition candidate is leading by 9 or 8%. For many months here, there have been concurrent polls that show the exact opposite. So you take your pick. Basically, there are about 15 to 20% differences between the two sides. And the feeling is that someone is skewering these polls and someone is manipulating them. And after the elections, we will find out. But I don't think this is his biggest fight. The biggest fight was at the end of the 1980s, when he was instrumental to getting rid of the communist regime, organizing a youth movement called Fidesz, which is his party's name. But this is a very close second. I think this is an existential fight, not only for Viktor Orban, but for Hungary.
Thank you. Donnacha, to you, the European Union, Brussels have been very quiet on this. I mean, clearly people in the European Union have their opinion of Viktor Orban and how he's running Hungary and the kind of problem child view some people take of Hungary's position in the EU. What's your take on this election and what Brussels would like to see?
I think it's no secret that Brussels would like to see a change of government in Budapest. Obviously, that's a matter for the Hungarian people. But Viktor Orban has certainly presented himself as no friend of the EU and the many member states that make up the EU in terms of its values. He's described his own project as that of an illiberal state. He's described Brussels as a greater threat than Russia. And he's, been involved in a lot of democratic backsliding. There was mention there made to the Viktor Orban of 1989. That was a Viktor Orban who was a liberal, who indeed joined the Liberal International. I think there's an old saying that, the definition of middle age is when somebody's, narrow waist and broad mind begin to change places. I think that certainly happened to Viktor Orban somewhere along the way. He has transformed into essentially a very conservative, autocratic and personalized form of governance there in Hungary. So I think from Brussels' perspective, I think, by the way, just to say as well that 18 billion, more or less, I think, 18 billion euro of EU funding for Hungary has been frozen because of that democratic backsliding. So that's not, personal opinion on my part. This is something that the EU itself has adjudged because of the actions that have been taken by this government over the years.
Thank you, Donnacha. Jennifer, to you. So Marco Rubio, your Secretary of State, he was in Munich recently, and he went straight from Munich to Budapest to shore up support for Viktor Orban. What does that tell us?
Exactly, and he visited Slovakia as well. I think what you're seeing is basically the sort of America First side of things, which is obviously the President and Secretary of State Rubio really aligning with some of these Central and Eastern European countries because of a few reasons. One, it's just more ideologically aligned. Number two, we respect the way they want to protect their borders. Number three, calling for, Viktor Orban was one of the first people to, call for peace in the Russia-Ukraine situation, where a lot of the other countries are just happy to continue on fighting. So you even saw some of the Democrat politicians from the United States more aligned with the Western European countries. And I would say Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, as you said, and the President, America First, more aligned with someone like Viktor Orban. We respect what he's done. And we also think that, signing that agreement, that was in the U.S. national security interest. Of course, it's for the Hungarian people to decide who they vote for. And, as the other gentleman said, maybe it'll be Orban just in a different body, but I would guess that one of the main reasons, other than he's a known entity to the United States, is that Peter Magyar might be seen as too close to the EU, maybe too pro-NATO, and the president especially prefers bilateral agreements rather than these supranational organizations like the EU.
And tell me, Jennifer, some people in Europe feel that senior American politicians shouldn't be getting involved. Rubio said very explicitly, you're getting a good economy because of your country's friendship with our president. Sanctions haven't been imposed, tariffs, issues like that. The inference being, of course, that if you don't return Orban in this election, maybe Trump's kind of fondness for Hungary might go away.
Yeah, and I don't think Hungary is the only country you're seeing that in. I mean, look at just, here in the United Kingdom, there's a lot of discussions around that. So if you read the most recent national security strategy or the defense strategy, we're very clear. Like, we will be allies with people who have the U.S. national interests in mind as well. Right now, that seems to be Viktor Orban. As far as election interference, there's been no direct election interference. As a matter of fact, I think it was interesting, which we saw come out overnight, a German court asking Twitter to turn over its files and its information on the Hungarian election, just like they did with Romania. And that's very concerning to me, much more than the U.S. interfering.
Thanks, Jennifer. Marc, back to you. Give us your take then on Rubio's arrival in Hungary and all of the razzmatazz that went along. Of all the capital cities in Europe he could have gone to, I mean, this is quite a deliberate choice.
Well, I think the visit from Marco Rubio was really spectacular for being completely unspectacular. As for Marco Rubio, in Hungary, he's hardly a household personality. As a journalist, I go out into the countryside to interview voters. And before Rubio's visit, I called up a few friends of mine in villages around Hungary, and really they had no idea who he was. One guy even said to me, "Isn't he the president of Cuba?" So you have to remember that you also have to remember the role that Rubio plays in the Trump administration. The fact is that they ran against each other for the Republican nomination in 2016. And Trump not only defeated Rubio, he humiliated him. So in the end, what is Rubio's reputation in the American Republican Party controlled by Trump? Well, he's a toady. He's a lickspittle with all the backbone of a bowl of oatmeal. Trump has sidelined, in the end, in this administration, traditional diplomacy, and he has nothing but disdain for the State Department. So in the end, Rubio's the guy that Trump sends out into the world to deliver the bad news that Trump doesn't want to deliver himself.
Thank you. Daniel, what are the issues then? What do Hungarian people care about? Is it the economy, cost of living, Ukraine? What's the top three?
Well, I think the economy is dominating the entire discussion here at the election campaign, especially for people, for the ordinary people. They say that they do not care as much about the ideological bits. They want their pensions to be strong. They want the social system and public services to work properly. However, the war in Ukraine is another issue that is very much pressing the Hungarian public. It's just basically in our neighborhood. It's too close for comfort. And only recently, yesterday, there was a serious escalation on the energy front with Ukraine when Ukraine has been accused by the Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico of deliberately not turning back the taps of Russian oil. And it was followed by the same accusations from the Hungarian foreign minister. And basically, both countries have turned off the taps to Ukraine's diesel supplies. But another very strong topic is migration. Illegal migration from the Middle East and Africa, and of course Brussels' authoritarian and anti-freedom of speech measures, holding back money and from Hungary, over 10 billion euros, and very few people have doubts about the Polish scenario happening should Peter Magyar win the elections, where the moment Donald Tusk took on the government, all the billions started flooding in to Poland, and I think that would be the plan here as well to support Brussels and Kiev's candidate in the elections or after the elections.
Thanks, Daniel. Donnacha, to you, I've seen pictures this week of posters across Budapest of President Zelensky of Ukraine, von der Leyen over his shoulder, Zelensky with his hand out, and the inference being that you, the Hungarian taxpayer, will be putting people's money into the hands of Zelensky and Ukrainians and the European Union. It's quite distasteful, some of the rhetoric Orban has been employing here.
Oh, indeed. I mean, there's a vicious, really, attack on Zelensky personally, and indeed on the Ukrainians who are fighting for their very existence. And no coincidence that Viktor Orban, of course, is not only probably Donald Trump's best friend in Europe, but he's also Vladimir Putin's best friend in Europe. And indeed, there's been an AI-generated video that was posted today on the Fidesz website, which shows a Hungarian man being executed by what looks like a Nazi soldier during World War II. And you have essentially the slogan, "Don't let others," and I think you read into that the EU, "Don't let others decide the fate of our family. War takes from everyone. Let's not take any chances. Fidesz is the safe choice." So it's combining a number of things there. And of course, there's an irony that Hungary started the war, World War II, on the side of the Nazis. But again, leave that aside. But it's trying to make out that Hungary is somehow jeopardized by, firstly, Ukraine somehow, even though it's Russia that's invaded Ukraine, and from Brussels, which, as I said, its main crime in this narrative is supporting Ukraine. And Hungary, of course, was one of those countries under Viktor Orban which has steadfastly opposed European Union membership for Ukraine, or indeed funding for Ukraine to protect itself from Russia's murderous attacks which occur daily.
Thanks, Donnacha. Jennifer, you hinted at it earlier on, the ideology behind why Trump likes Orban. Just elaborate on that a bit for us. What is it about his leadership that, you know, conservatives in the United States really like? Because it's a very strong relationship.
Sure. I think the first thing would be it's a difference between a small government versus big government. Do you want to be part of the EU, or do you want to be more of a nationalist and care about Hungary, as your primary concern, which the American people voted for Trump on an America First agenda, not an isolationist agenda, but America First. So I think that's number one. Number two is also protecting the borders. You know, Hungary obviously has had money held back from them, from the EU, because they won't take certain migrants and everything. The United States, in our most recent election, that was one of the top two issues, controlling the southern border. We can see now Trump's done a fantastic job of that. And number three, I think we respect, I believe Secretary of State Rubio did say something about Christian ideology and, if it was not, a Christian country, and that probably resonates with a lot of conservative Americans as well.
And is Hungary, widely known in the United States? Is Orban a name? Your average American voter, do they care that Trump has these friends in Europe?
That's a great question. And as we look into the midterms, I think one of the ways in which Trump is going to be hit is because he has spent too much time on international issues, right? We want, just like I'm sure the Hungarians do, the guests have just rattled off the domestic issues that are important. That's the same thing to the United States. So a lot of people would want him spending less time in these places. The average American, God bless them, probably could not point out Hungary on a map, probably couldn't point out Ukraine on a map until 4 years ago.
Thanks, Jennifer. Marc, to you, what do we know about Peter Magyar, leader of the opposition, leader of Tisza? What kind of a leader would he be for Hungary?
Well, Magyar, he burst onto the scene of Hungarian politics during an Orban cronyism scandal a couple of years ago. Magyar publicly denounced government corruption after a well-connected official got out of jail after covering up sexual abuse in government-run orphanages. And for years, Orban really pretended to protect Christian civilization. But what the voters discovered in that scandal is that actually his government protects officials who cover up sexual abuse of children. As for Orban's defense of Christian civilization, which Jennifer mentioned, I really actually think it's a good idea to defend Christian civilization. Perhaps Orban should try it out here in Hungary. The story, though, about this election isn't Peter Magyar, but rather the Hungarian electorate, which is really fed up with corruption. Under Viktor Orban's leadership, his own son-in-law has become one of the wealthiest people in this country, while the rest of the country suffers high inflation, declining standard of living, and so on.
Daniel, just come in on that then. What do you say to these allegations of corruption then against Orban, what you've just been hearing said there?
Peter Magyar is viewed by most Hungarians as really a proxy leader concocted up by Brussels.
Thank you. Donnacha, just your thoughts on what a change in government would mean in Hungary for the European Union then, because this has been quite a strange relationship, to say the least. A lot of people in Europe see Orban and Hungary as a Trojan horse. They got in and then they unleashed havoc.
Yeah, I think the biggest change would potentially be in Hungary's foreign policy and, of course, its position within the European Union, which has been for some years now that of an outlier, a pariah even. I think it would certainly mean something different for Ukraine's chances of entering the EU in the near future. And there's a common purpose between Viktor Orban and Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. I mean, Jennifer said that, most people in America wouldn't be able to place Hungary in the map, but then you have to ask yourself, why is this country prioritized above all others? Indeed, Kaja Kallas, the EU foreign policy chief, couldn't get a meeting with Marco Rubio. The reason is that they see Viktor Orban as a mechanism for undermining the EU. And that serves, of course, America first interest. It serves a Russia first interest agenda. Why? Because individual states in the EU are not particularly strong, but collectively they can act as a major force in global politics. And America, of course, doesn't want a peer in Europe. It doesn't, and Russia doesn't want a peer. So there's a common agenda there, and they see Viktor Orban as the best way of pursuing that agenda within Europe. So obviously, if Viktor Orban, is removed from office, there is the potential, not the certainty, that Hungary could rejoin the vast majority of states in the European Union in terms of its values and in terms of its geopolitical orientation.
Thanks, Donnacha. Jennifer, just come in on that point Donnacha made there. America undermining the European Union. What is it about the EU you don't like?
Quite frankly, right now, because it's very weak. So I agree with Donnacha. I think there is some undermining of the EU in its current state. Both Vice President J.D. Vance at last year's Munich Security Conference and, of course, Secretary of State Rubio at this year said, hey, you are a close ally of ours. We cannot carry you how we have been for years. And so you need to be stronger. And whether that's securing your borders, whether that's becoming energy self-sufficient, which he's been, Trump told the Germans years ago, and look what happened, or, controlling your borders, censorship, free speech. We need strong allies. We don't need allies just for the sake of it because it's the EU and the US. So yeah, I agree with you, but probably for a different reason than you think.
And just tell me, the whole European project, you still consider it weak right now?
Yes. I do. I personally do, and I think a lot of people in America do. I mean, you look at there was zero, going back to this Ukraine situation, zero ability to act for peace in the last 4.5 years. And then when all of a sudden the U.S. said, hey, we might take our bat and ball and go home, then we had the coalition of the willing. Nothing has happened since then. Quite frankly, it looks like in a lot of these peace meetings that they're trying to scupper it, just like the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson did. So that to me seems a bit weak. And also it's like a lot of the countries seem quite embarrassed of their histories and their backgrounds, and they're overly apologetic. Anybody who would follow this net zero nonsense is insane. You cannot have a society or a prosperous society unless you have cheap, affordable energy. As you know, in this country, we pay 4 times what they pay in other countries. So and then, free speech. So just some very basic common sense issues, and we're verging into totally different directions.
Thank you, Jennifer. Marc, to you, just give us your prediction as to where this will go in the next few weeks. I'm guessing the gloves will be off. This will be a proper political slugfest.
Absolutely. But before I get into that, I want to jump in on Ukraine a little bit. This isn't about a land swap. It's not about making peace because Americans want it. It's about a war of Russian hatred and aggression.
Daniel,
as for the future here in Hungary, that it's the tone and of the rhetoric is just getting more and more heated. I fully expect there to be some pretty nasty rhetorical dirty tricks coming out of the government over the next couple of months. And I think the media should absolutely be wary and suspicious of the messaging that we hear and where it comes from. And I think that is a matter of vigilance that I think all journalists need to have covering this election.
Thank you. Daniel, just come in on what Marc said there about the war in Ukraine. How does the average Hungarian feel in the street, do you think?
There are a number of polls how they feel about the war, and they are very broadly supportive of the Hungarian government's policy of not sending troops or weapons to Ukraine, and they're also supportive of the Hungarian government's policies of trying to get to a negotiated settlement in terms of a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine, rather than going through the battlefield. I think Hungarian society as a whole have stuck together and said, yes, let's support these people. They are in a real time of need and in a time of national tragedy. But the solution is not the current German solution of sending more and more weapons there or sending more troops. And the solution isn't either accepting a war-torn country into the European Union. That would bring enormous burdens onto Hungarian families. 800 billion euros of aid that has been rubber stamped for Ukraine is going to basically bring about debt for generations of Europeans, and plus $600 billion worth of military aid. Those are huge numbers, and I don't think many Europeans have been asked about this, except for the Hungarians.
Thank you. Donnacha, just a final point to you. A lot of observers within the European Union find it very strange that a country like Hungary, which has such a painful recent past with the Soviet Union and everything that happened in 1956, has a leader who is in and out of the Kremlin quite regularly and can call up Putin and get an audience and have that friendship.
It is remarkable. I mean, we're approaching the 60th anniversary of the suppression of the, heroic Hungarian uprising of 1956. It was the Kremlin who sent in troops to suppress that rebellion, which was simply looking for democracy and freedom. And to see the successors, the political successors of those Hungarians, essentially act in cohort with the Kremlin as it now tries to suppress the freedom of neighboring Ukrainians is really remarkable, and it is shameful.
Donnacha O Beachain, thank you very much. Marc, Daniel and Jennifer Ewing here in the studio as well. Thank you all. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable TRT World. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.